Oh yeah, welcome to Weddings Uncensored, where we drink and talk and talk and drink. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Allie, and we're here breaking down the good, the bad, and the downright crazy of this whole wedding industry. Cheers!
Cheers!
Cheers! We have a guest on with us today. This is Brian Franklin of Vows and Speeches.
Yeah.
VowsandSpeeches.com.
VowsandSpeeches.com. How'd you get that URL? That's a good one.
It's a fun story, yeah.
Is it? Did you have to kill some other
It was
Vows
efficient.
and Speeches, right?
It was shockingly available on GoDaddy.
I love it. It's so
Awesome.
straight to the point too. You didn't try to muck it up with something confusing.
Yeah,
what do you do?
It's
Vows and Speeches.
It's very easy.
Love it.
Well, you can probably get an idea of what we're talking about today.
Dancing.
He's here to talk about ballroom dance. No, we're going to talk about writing your own vows and speeches, why you would perhaps hire a professional to write your vows and speeches, and other parts of life as well. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and just how you got into the industry. You started as a political writer, right? Or writing speeches?
I was a political consultant.
Okay.
So we did advertising, everything from rapid response messaging to debate training to media training to speech writing was part of it. And so having done that for about 17 years, I got kind of tired of politics. I don't know if you've paid attention to the world at all.
Can't even watch the news.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
I'm tired of this.
Yeah, I didn't want to be part of this anymore. And I had a great time, had a great career. My wife and I worked together in it, and but I had been looking at different things to try and get out of it, and I tried a couple of different things adjacent to politics that wasn't actual politics, and neither of them worked. But then we had the pandemic, and I had a pandemic podcast, and I was interviewing a friend of mine who was a writer for The Tonight Show, and he was for 17 years, and he also did ghostwriting for all types of different things. And I started thinking about it because I had officiated a few weddings. I had been asked by friends and family members to help them with their speeches because they knew that was part of my skill set. And I was like, let me look into wedding speeches. I could do that remotely. It's something that I could, have a lot of fun with. So I started looking at it. And there were very few people doing it, very few people. And the ones that were doing it seemed to be one-person operations. And there didn't, if you go to the Knot or Wedding Wire or any of these sites, there's really not a category for it.
Yeah.
And so there was no niche established. And I was looking for something that was not only something that I could do, but something that was scalable and that you could create a brand around and ultimately, build a business. And so I came up with this idea of doing wedding speeches, and I go on Clubhouse, which at the time, if you were
that was
a
popping.
thing.
It was popping.
Is it still a thing?
For like 3
it's
weeks.
barely a thing.
Okay.
For 3 weeks.
For
it
3
was
weeks,
popping.
it was really the place to be.
It was like the tail end of the pandemic. You had all of the wedding planners and wedding professionals were all congregating, hundreds of them, right?
Yeah.
So I go into one of the rooms and I raise my hand and I ask them what they thought about this idea of having a business doing wedding speeches. And a couple of the planners in there said, yes, do that, but add custom vows and ceremony scripts. And and
100%.
I said thank you and whatnot. And I was still on stage, and I go on GoDaddy, I'm listening, and I find vowsandspeeches.com is available.
That's great.
That's awesome. And so I
awesome.
snap that up. I put it on Squarespace. I build a site. I can write, so I can build.
I got this.
I wrote the
problem.
site in like 20 minutes. I got some stock photography, and I threw it up there, and I sent it back to them like an hour or two later. Right?
That's crazy.
And they freaked out. And so then, but this was the fun part. That night, I put up some Google ads, and I got a client the next day.
Wow.
And while
it
has
that's
not been
awesome.
that easy, I wish it was.
But
And that's how I became a billionaire.
right?
And therefore I can buy and sell all of you.
That's awesome that you were able to just go and do it. I feel like a lot of people just have issues of just going and doing something.
Well, the execution is always the hard part.
As my wife who does the books could tell, my wife Nicole is my co-founder in this. She could tell you, I have no trouble spending money. I can go straight to the spending anytime I want.
I got you.
But yeah, so I did that, and we, I was still in politics, so we were poking at it, and we went to Wedding MBA, and we were walking around talking. I got the business cards, and we were walking around talking to people, and they had this incredible reaction and it was just shocking to me.
It's awesome.
It was shocking to me how there was all this money being spent in a wedding, and yet the spoken parts of the wedding are let's say 20 minutes of the ceremony plus maybe the vows, maybe it turns into 30 minutes. And then you have what is hopefully 20 minutes of wedding speeches.
Yeah.
And
Could
that's
be
a significant chunk of the wedding. 50 minutes of the wedding that has traditionally, no real professional guidance.
Totally.
And so that was the thinking. So we started talking to people in Wedding MBA, and they were freaking out. And we were walking out, my wife, she goes, you've had a lot of cockamamie ideas in the past, but this isn't one of them. And
this
I
is not.
Yeah, and I said,
not cockamamie.
This is not a cockamamie idea. And so we go to dinner that night, and I'm like, okay, well, we've got to talk this through, because what does that mean? Like, what does it mean to do this? What does it mean to give up your time, because I'm the head of this business?
You were like, logistically, I need to see what this means.
Yeah, and also, what, like, are you willing to take the chance?
Yeah,
like and she was, and so we've been doing it. And
it's awesome.
And we've been now 3 years in, hundreds of clients, and we work nationwide. We were lucky to be in the New York Times and featured in that.
Awesome. Yeah.
And so it's, we're working on it. We've still got a long way to go to build the business that we want to build. But I'm authentically full time in it, and it's been great.
That's awesome.
It's so
Congrats.
crazy. Well, it is kind of insane that it's not really more of a thing, right? I mean, as a wedding planner, I often tell people my least favorite part of the wedding day is speeches, because they are so cringe most of the time. And it can take so much time, like you said, but like it makes me uncomfortable. I don't even know these people. I can only imagine. We interviewed an officiant, Nico, of Rom-Com Officiants, on here, and he made a good point of the ceremony is really setting the tone for the whole day, right? And the fact that it is kind of an afterthought for a lot of folks. I mean, or how many brides I've seen writing their vows the morning of, or, we're picking a friend. Yeah, we're picking a friend to be the officiant. The whole thing really feels like an afterthought a lot of the time. So you make such a good point that this should be a priority, not just an afterthought.
And personalizing the wedding with your story is it makes such a difference, not just to the couple to get it out there and make sure that people hear it, but I think if you're in the audience, and the opposite of that is to listen to the same generic ceremony that everybody has heard or seen on TV 1,000 times, and it's just not that exciting or boring. You're waiting for cocktail hour to begin. You're just waiting for them to get married so you can do it and get the kiss and go on. Totally. And rather than learning something about them, getting sucked into their story, and hopefully crying and laughing and having all of the feelings that you should have at a wedding, which is that it's beautiful and it's fun, and that's how you talk about things. And so for me, the ceremony and the vows offer an opportunity to get people involved in it, get people leaning into the rest of the event, and it does set the tone, and it gives them a chance to express their personality, not just with the visuals, but with the words.
I mean, for videography, it's always huge plus when I know that the officiant did a great job and the vows were done really well. Now I'm like super stoked about editing, because now I have good content
and reaction shots.
I have reactions. I've got a story. Like that's the biggest thing, because I can use footage from the rest of the wedding day. But if I have good audio and good speeches, it'd be amazing.
That's why I think a lot of our business comes through videographers, because they like this stuff.
No, 100%.
And I know when we got one of our first clients, this couple gets married. And 6 months later we get the video, and we get the highlight reel, and the entire highlight reel were their vows that we had helped them write. And just to be clear, we're not writing it instead of them.
Yes.
These come from deep interviews. We do an hour-long interview.
Love it.
There's no questionnaire. I feel like the idea of asking people that have trouble writing to then write inside a questionnaire it can be problematic.
Yep.
And so we do this big interview. We record it. We get all of their words. We get their wording where we can use it. And if not, it's something that they've conveyed to us that we're condensing. And so then it's a collaborative process. We go back and forth with the editing, and we'll do it in any which way that they're comfortable with. Sometimes it's a phone call. Sometimes they like to do it in Google Docs and write their notes. And sometimes they just want to edit it from there. And that's fine, because you know it when you see it. But But in any case, it gets them close. Not everybody can write. I mean, it gets them closer to where they want to be. And even if you can write, these are really hard things to write and summarize.
Communicate your eternal love for somebody.
In a minute and a half, right?
Yeah. And make it entertaining and snappy, but also heartfelt. Yeah. And it's so hard. Is it usually both partners that you're doing the vows, or will like just one partner come to you?
It's usually both, but I mean, I would say 40% of them, it's one.
Yeah.
In terms of vows.
Because that would be like a real dick move, You're like the groom and you're like, my vows are going to be awesome. I'm hiring a fucking professional. Bitch doesn't have a chance. Mine's going to be so much better.
True, but you could also be like, well, I know she's already a great speaker. I am a terrible public speaker.
And that's what usually happens. It's the person that is married to a marketing director.
Yes.
But they're in science, right?
Yes,
or whatever it is. And or just somebody that has trouble expressing themselves that way. But there are also a lot of people that do this because they're just so afraid of public speaking in general, even if they're great writers, that it paralyzes them, and they want to check off on the content, and even if you're good, we can make it better or funny, or not everybody's funny. And so we work on that piece of it. So we have a lot of fun with it, but it's about personalizing it and getting it out in a way that you want to get it out, not the way that I would write it. And it's a thing that we have to work on as far as our marketing, just to make sure that people understand that we're not. This is not.
And make it sound like them talking,
not Brian
not just
writing
like
Mary's
someone
vows.
else.
Yeah.
That's especially for vows and speeches. I mean, ceremony obviously you want to be personal, but it's like my feelings coming from my mouth, my memories. Like, how do you kind of wrangle that? That's very, I'm sure, challenging.
Well, like, you got to be a good interviewer for
That's
sure.
it.
100%.
Yeah.
So like, and I think from my perspective of like, I think people will ask like, oh, well, what do you think for the video? And what do you think is going to be best? And what should, even sometimes of like, well, what do we talk about in our vows? It's like, you really shouldn't, like, I'm not the guy to answer this question for you.
Right.
I visually make sure that I want the story to be told, but I don't want, like, my style is more documentary, so
but
I don't want
works.
to force. I never want to like force somebody to like say something again, like, or redo this again. I want the moment to just happen.
Yeah.
So I think having someone like you to be able to provide that service.
Kyle's out of control today.
To provide that service, I think would be amazing though for any and all couples, even if it's just like a quick like glance through.
It's so much fun. I mean, going from politics, where it's where I learned how to be a good interviewer, is advertising and 100%. Then later politics, because you have to dig into what makes them tick, what do they stand for, what's tell me about your life, we need to write about your bio, that kind of thing. And in advertising it was the same thing. It's like we have to get into the product side of it and do a full deep dive so that we understand it, and then we can summarize it for the masses. And that's why I think political consultants and reporters would make such great writers for us, because they're the ones that know how to ask those questions and go, whoa, wait, tell me more about that. I need to know more about that piece of it, or can you expand on that?
Yeah, because you may not think it's important, but you're like, oh no, we need to we need to go in this.
You're
for
listening
a second.
for the hook, okay? You're listening for the hook in the story, and I think, like, rom-com writers would be great too, right? You want that romance, you want that sense of drama and act and know how to do the dynamics, but you really, the most work in this whole job is the interview. If you get the interview right, it writes itself.
Totally. And I wonder how many times couples, or even someone who's like giving a speech, right? Like, they almost can't even recognize all the like cute, the meet cutes and the like fun things to include, right? Like, you're interviewing them, you're getting this, you're like, that's gold right there, right? But it's like, they lived it, they experienced it, maybe they can't see it in the same way. So it's almost just a different perspective of viewing this same memory.
They're not thinking about when they moved in together, all of the stuff that they decided to throw out of their part. Like, they're we're not taking that, right? We're absolutely not taking that. We're going to take this instead. They're not thinking about some of the fun parts of their spouse to be that is quirky or weird or something that we could tease but not actually be harmful or mean about, right?
Right. And people
like I could be sensitive, but it's
like
fine.
I didn't know that you collected Dragon Ball Z figures, but hey, I went with it, right?
Yeah. And the people, they love that shit.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, so they're expressing, themselves and sharing their story, but also we talk a lot about guest experience on this podcast, right? And so setting the tone, making sure the ceremony is entertaining, making sure the speeches don't take so fucking long and they're super boring. Like this all, so that the catering's not pissed because the toasts are going too long and all of that.
Your videographer, photographer can sit down and go eat their food.
Yeah, it's like all of those pieces really do have such a huge effect on the vendor experience, on the guest experience, and of course on the couple's experience of the day as well.
Well, it's interesting because I don't think there is and this is something that has occurred to me now that I've been in the business a little bit, which is that wedding planners, generally the way they get paid, they're already set. Like when the speeches go on, if it goes bad, it's not their fault.
The work
they know that, right? Mm-hmm. They may be responsible if it goes way long and they didn't intervene,
but they can't do anything about the speech.
But if they go 5 minutes long or 10 minutes long, it's just something that people suffer through.
Yeah.
But they're gonna get paid either way, right? But the caterers and the venues, if the food comes out cold,
them over.
If the food comes out cold, that's a problem, right? They're going to be mad, and they're going to be mad at them, not connecting it to the speech. And so one of the messages we have to get out is like, this is insurance for your food.
Yes.
And for both on the customer side and on the venue side, which we're selling to as well. It's like, this is insurance to make sure your food comes out on time.
True.
Yes.
The other side of it is like, who wants to be bored out of their mind?
Yeah,
right?
That's what I'm saying. It's like the guest, like it really is so vital for everybody. But guest experience is so important. And when there's a good speech and everyone's in it, which by the way rarely happens, which is why I say speeches are like my least favorite part of the day.
Yeah.
It really does capture everybody, and it's so exciting and it's so special.
Yeah,
and that's
when it's great,
when it's great, it's great.
It makes the wedding. In my own wedding, my 16-year-old stepdaughter did a roast. It was great of me, but it was it was awesome and beautiful.
Not biased, yes, unbiased for
it
sure.
It was just absolutely. It was awesome and beautiful, and I mean, she got right through me to all my like graphical T-shirts. Like, she was like, she Googled me. It was a bad when I came into the picture.
We did some research.
She did some research. She talked all about that stuff, and it was really fun. But people kept coming up to us like years later, like that was the highlight of the wedding, and it can be. It can be that moment where people just like are just, oh my God, this is amazing, and when the father and the bride does it right,
everybody starts losing.
Oh my God, the dads are always the one that go on too long though. It's always it'll be 5 minutes. It'll be 5 minutes. It's 25 minutes later, and I'm like, literally 30 minutes. Like you said, the whole wedding,
50 minutes is
a whole wedding is 6 hours long. So if you are taking 30 minutes for your speech, that's obscene. What you are doing to the whole experience.
I've had one dad for 50 minutes.
That's just one. Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly.
50?
50.
Cool.
Yeah, I've had a dad.
That's not cool.
50's a verified record. There's a 90-minute one out there that I need to verify, but the 50 is the verified record. 50 minutes,
I would lose my mind as a planner, as a guest, as a bride, as anything. I would lose
5
my
minutes.
mind.
5 minutes is often too long if it's not good content.
Yeah.
Ours are 3 to 4. Unless they force us to,
go longer.
Go longer.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't go there with them. We work across the country. I don't go there with them.
No, sure.
I can only give them the speech.
That's true. You know, if they improv.
If they vamp and improv, that's on you. Okay, but you got to think about like, you want people out there like leaning in. I said leaning in again, but you want them captivated.
Yeah.
And if you go more than like 4 minutes, they're on their phones.
Totally.
They are on their phones. Half the audience is looking down. They're just like stretching.
Well, I like to tell people this is a toast, not a speech, because I feel like just the word speech implies long, right? Whereas a toast is like, well, let's keep it snappy.
It's a quick Oscar speech. That's what it should be. Or a quick Oscar toast.
Some people say speech, some people say toast.
Totally.
The bottom line is if you're not practicing it at home and timing it, you don't know how long it is.
Totally, yeah. 100%. And 4 minutes goes by faster than you think when you're talking. You might think that, a 5 minute speech, like that's so long. No, it's really not.
People come in with 7 pages of 10-point fonts, and they wind up going 20 minutes but they think it's 5 because it looks short to them, right?
So if
bullets or whatever.
If I'm a best man or a maid of honor or a dad, and I have to give a speech, what are like the top 2 or 3 pointers that you would give? Like,
well,
what do we want to hit?
The first one we just talked about. Keep it short
Yeah.
and practice it, right? Make sure that you have timed it out, because even if you had the right number of words, some people talk fast, some people talk slow.
Yeah.
All right, so time it out. Make sure you're in the window and that you're sticking to the timeline. The other thing that you want to make sure that you're doing is you're talking about both of the couple individually and together, right? So you don't just make this all about your daughter or your son. You're talking about their fiance and what you love about them, and what you love about how they treat their your son or daughter. But then you want to talk about what it means to see them as a couple, and perhaps some, if you're married and you have some good perspective on marriage or some good advice, then I think you end with that and some nice platitudes.
No, I like that. It kind of touches.
But so I think structure. You just want to make sure that it's not one-sided.
Yeah.
That's the other thing you want to make sure, is that whatever humor that you're bringing to the table, that it can do no harm.
Yeah.
Right. And that can be a tough one, because some people will love edgy comedy. Like, I love edgy comedy myself.
Yeah.
But this is not your your opportunity for comedy.
How does it go from being a toast to a roast?
Right.
You know, and maybe there is a time and a place for a slightly more roasty. You know, you probably know your people,
Or maybe
right?
your people.
Maybe
You know
save
your
it for after.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be
Save that
during.
for the
It
after
doesn't have to
hours.
be during the toast.
Yeah.
Well,
Save it for
What
after.
does grandma need to hear about your, college boyfriend and all the weird things that happen? Probably not.
I was talking about this with someone recently, where you have to consider that the humor that you have in your house or with your family and friends in your house is going to be a little different. The criteria is different when you're in a room and maybe their bosses are there, or their coworkers, or or grandma or whoever.
Yeah.
It's going to be a different type of vibe, or maybe just because it's their wedding and they just don't want to be cut down here, right? And so you just got to be careful. And if I'm going to err on the side of caution, of course, but I also know how to push it. Like, there's certain things you could do where you can get right up to the line of it, and it's innuendo or it's something delicate, but you kind of know you can
give a little analogy
let them,
or something else.
Let let the audience put it in their own head sometimes, right? And so you can do it in a way that's fun and you have a little bit of plausible deniability.
Yeah.
No, I got you.
Well, and I think, like you were kind of saying before too, so finding something that is universally like understood about that person.
Yeah.
Because like an inside joke is not funny to coworkers and grandma, no matter what. Like, no matter how funny that is.
Also, you and the bride or groom can have their little chuckle.
Yeah.
And no one else is like, what?
Yeah.
This is a gift to the couple.
Yeah.
You're up there to pay tribute, ultimately, to pay tribute to the couple. You want it to be fun.
Yeah.
You want it to be sentimental.
Right.
Right.
But if everyone knows that you wear graphic T-shirts to the point that it's,
Right,
ridiculous, then that's
it's
something you
funny.
can touch on.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It wasn't
Yeah.
like this one time in 4th grade when
Right.
you did this thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
but we won't go there.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many
don't
fucking
ever
times I hear that.
Yeah, and best men, maid of honor, don't ever talk about previous exes, previous activities that are possibly, no drugs. I mean, whatever. Leave it all out, because I have interviewed so many different wedding planners, and they all have stories. I mean, even at the highest budgets, have stories
Horrific.
that would blow your mind.
Dang.
And it's just and they ruined the wedding.
That sucks.
They ruined the wedding.
Yeah.
You can't. That's what people are going to be talking about.
Yeah,
right?
no, it's true.
Yeah. You don't want your
they will
efficient
remember.
or your
Right.
speeches to be the reason why people remember it in a bad way.
Right.
Yeah.
You want it to be remembered in a very good way.
So from a structural perspective, then, like we talked about speeches, but what about vows? Are there like 3 bullet points that you should always be hitting when you're writing your own vows?
Yeah. Well, first of all, make sure that you're talking to your fiance and that they are of equal length, roughly, right?
Yeah.
You hear a lot about imbalance in the vows, where somebody spills their guts in a really heartfelt way, and then the other person comes in with 20 seconds of, you're great. And
Yeah.
like, this is
I
awesome.
love you so much.
I love you.
and,
I love you forever.
Can't wait for tonight.
Yeah, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Blah, blah.
Yeah. And they're out.
Yeah.
So make sure that there's some balance in it. And then the other side of it, I think, is, again, do no harm, all that other stuff that we mentioned earlier about how you apply humor. But I think it really is about telling stories. Don't just say you're the most special person to me. Don't just say you've changed my life, but talk about those moments in your history that are meaningful to you, and go back in time and find the stories and find the attributes that make you laugh, or that really solidify or serve as examples of why you're here and why that person was special. And because, look, that first date, it's not about just how you met or where you met. It's about like, what was that feeling that you felt when you saw that person for the first time in the bar or at the coffee shop or wherever it was. Or on, at your home on Tinder or whatever.
Yeah,
exactly.
While I was swiping.
While you were swiping, what did you first think?
But I asked that. Yeah.
That's a hot
girl. Do you remember anything about their profile? What was it about their profile that stuck out at you? Do you remember? Do you have the chat?
No, that's actually a really 100%. Common one these days, though. So many people meet on the apps now. It's
clients.
like, and that's not weird. I have had a few clients that will actually print out like a screenshot of their first like Bumble chat, the bubbles back and forth. It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, sure. If you're a guy, you swiped right for everybody, and whatever, but you super like this one. So why? You remember why? And then what was that first interaction like, and how did you get there, and what did you feel when you saw that, and why did you do the second date? Why? And when you get into those reasons, that's where it's at, and that's where you can stick it in. And then when you moved in together, what was how did you manage this? How, who wakes up early? What what are your roles? That kind of thing, and what's fun for you guys? And those stories are what make good vows, in my opinion, and I think and get people really like, oh, cool, that's fun.
And I think too, like the interview that you're talking about is 100% where the magic will happen.
Yes.
Because if that interview is golden and you have good questions, which Brian, all the questions you're asking, I'm like, oh yeah, you should always be asking this question. Oh yeah, you should always have this question when you're making your vows. So I think for sure, even having like maybe like on Instagram and stuff, I know 100% people would love if you had like little snippets. Of like people can just take it in. Oh yeah, 100%.
It's fun because I deliberately don't give them the questions in advance. Because I like the reaction. And I also, I mean, there are times where they'll come back to me later and say, like, I need to come back to you. I need to think about that. And no problem, because this is a living document until we have to finalize it. And we give them unlimited revisions. We'll keep working on it until you're happy.
Cool.
And, but the order of the questions is never set. I mean, I know what I'm probably going to start with, but I'm going to let the conversation go, and then we might circle around to 15 things, because you'll suddenly say something, and then we'll come back to that, go back to that, and dig deeper.
And people have interesting stories. I'm sure there's people that you're interviewing who are like, "What the hell? Like, I didn't even know where this was going to go."
Someday I'm going to write a book. The things I've learned about love by interviewing people getting married, and the people that love them, right? And it's because I have all of these interviews and all of these answers, and I'm learning stuff about my own relationship and how I react to things. When you talk to them, and one of the questions I ask is, okay, when you guys get into any kind of dispute of any kind, like, how do you solve it? Like, how do you does somebody crack a joke? Do you sit down and talk it out? And, do you have a special thing that you do? Because some of them do. Some people actually, mainly millennials, will sit, we'll sit at a table and they'll, talk about their feelings and what, something that you said earlier today bothers me slightly.
We love it.
Right. Yeah. Which is, something that you have to learn to do. Right. And some of them are very clear about their love languages, and others are not, and so it's fun. You get a lot of good stuff.
That's so great. I love it.